Hello, 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 hello. Hey guys, welcome back to Critical African Thinkers. As you know, this is a place where we examine everything under the microscope of logic to ascertain what is most factual and logically consistent. Now, I think it's been up to a month or more that I had a live stream. I've been very, very busy, so couldn't do any live streams. But there's a lot of things that have been happening that I really wanted to talk about. And Twitter is always a source of crazy things to talk about. If you wanted to talk about crazy things every day, you would have ample you just have a lot of it on Twitter. So today we're going to be talking about the controversy surrounding the new Romeo and Juliet, right? Mostly the Juliet, the Romeo, people do not have any problem with, but somehow a lot of people on Twitter or X have a problem with the casting of that black lady as Juliet. I think there's almost everything is racialized on Twitter. Almost everything, right? For people who always complain of, you know, inserting race into everything, they seem to, and I'm speaking of right wingers in this case, they seem to care so much about the racial makeup of someone who is carrying out a certain role. Like a conversation I had with one of my white friends months ago, or up to a year ago. He was saying, "Oh, when you look at the casts on the TV, they don't represent, they don't reflect the demographic makeup of the city or the state or the country. So, for example, you get more black people, you get more Asian people on TV than white people. So even in areas where you have up to 70% white people, you have more black faces on the TV, anchoring the news, doing commercials, and all that." And so I asked them a question. I said, "So these people doing these things, are they competent enough in their jobs? Do they know what they are doing?" And he said, "Yes." Then I was like, "So what's the problem? If they are competent enough at their job, why should it matter that they are not white? Why should it matter that they don't reflect the demographic makeup of the population, right? Isn't it the same thing as those who want a certain quota? It's like you yourself are arguing for, you're arguing for racial quotas. You're arguing to say, oh, because this place is 70% white, then we should have up to that amount of white people being on TV, right? So yeah, so a lot of things have been happening, and one of the things that really struck me before I get into this story that I want to get into today, before I get into the analysis I want to get into today, one of the things that really struck me was something that happened some a while ago. I'm Nigerian. I am in Nigeria, right? And there was a time where the Nigerian government came up with this law, that they passed this law that foreign models will not be allowed to feature in advertisements in Nigeria, right? Because there was this trend where you see there are ads on TV, and all you see is white looking models, right? So there was an uproar that, oh, why are they not using the people? Why are they not using Nigerians to do these models? You look at music videos, you see white people, you see very light skinned people, and all that. So there was an uproar, and the Advertising and Regulatory Commission actually put that law that foreign models will not be allowed to be featured in adverts in Nigeria. So there was a time I wanted to do an advert for a product, certain products in my company, and there were three casts. There were three models in the cast. Two of them looked, yeah, stereotypically black, stereotypically African, but the third one looked light. She wasn't Caucasian, but she looked a little bit mixed race, right? I wouldn't even say she's mixed race. She just looked very, very light. And I was told that we couldn't use that model because she was that light. And it pissed me the hell off because I was like, yeah, Nigerians are mostly dark, but there are Nigerians that look like this, right? There are Nigerians that have this phenotypic feature. There are Nigerians that are this light skinned. So, are you going to be discriminating against fellow Nigerians because they look light, because they look white? I mean, it doesn't make any sense. There are Nigerians that are mixed race as well, that have parents that are different races, right? So it didn't make any sense to me, and I sort of blotted out in the room. I was like, "Oh, this agency is racist and all that." So that is something that is real. That is something that's happening in my country, which I don't like. Now, I understand why they brought up that law in the first place, because music videos, advertisement, they were just using foreign people to do all that. But when your basis of saying this person is foreign is simply based on how they look, then I have a problem with that. If it's simply based on their phenotypic characteristics, I have a problem with that. I mean, if the regulatory agency in America makes that kind of law and says, "Oh, we don't want foreigners doing certain advertisements in our country," which makes sense. But if the basis of determining who is a foreigner is simply their skin color, then you're going to run into problems, right? You're going to run into massive problems, because skin color doesn't really tell you someone's nationality, it doesn't tell you their ethnicity so much, right? It's just the skin color, right? So I think that's something that needs to really change in my country. I don't like that. I think it is discriminatory. I don't think anybody should be discriminated against based on the color of their skin, just because they are light skinned, just because they're nah, doesn't make any sense to me. Now, this brings me to the conversation of today, right? There's a new casting for Romeo and Juliet. I think Tom Holland. Uh, Let me just check. I hope I'm hearing some noise. I hope I'm audible and clear enough. I hope you're not hearing this noise that's coming from my mic. But anyway, so there's a new casting for Romeo and Juliet, right? Tom Holland and another African, I would say African lady or black lady, right? She's going to be cast as um, Juliet, and there has been mad opera on right wing Twitter. There has been crazy opera. There have been comments about her. So now this time, funny enough, they didn't say anything about her race, right? Most of them were just saying, "Oh, she looks ugly. Oh, she looks ugly," and I'll just read, you know, I'll just read one comment, right, from Twitter. And it says, Romeo and Juliet, they say Tom Holland is supposed to kill himself because he can't have her, like sarcastically saying that, oh, she's ugly and all that. And then another Twitter user, this is a black YouTuber, Anthony Brian Logan, says, I think this woman was cast as Juliet because they knew there would be arguments over her looks, and if you say she isn't classically attractive, you'll be labeled a racist. There are plenty of black women they could have picked aside from her. Now, on face value, that makes sense, right? You can say, oh, she's not classically beautiful, but then you ask yourself, who gets to set the standards of beauty? Who gets to say someone is not beautiful? Who gets to say someone is not classically beautiful, right? But even at that, why is that a requirement? She's a human being. Does she have good acting skills? Yes. If she has good acting skills, why is that your problem? I mean, if you don't like the movie, don't watch. If you don't want to see someone ugly on TV, please don't watch that movie. But to berate this young woman, to just make her life a living hell because you think, oh, she's ugly, so she can't be in this. It doesn't make sense. But I know for a I suspect, let me not say I know for a fact, I suspect that the reason a lot of people have issues with that, which some of them have voiced out, is not because she's ugly, but because she's black, right? And I'll tell you why I think this is the case, right? Some of them are saying, oh, we wouldn't even have any issue if she was pretty, right? Some of them have said, oh, but Romeo and Juliet, oh, Romeo and the characters of Romeo and Juliet were typically European and all that. And I'm like, okay, but Romeo and Juliet are fictional characters. They were made up characters, right? So is there a law that fictional characters have to be played by specific ethnic groups or specific racial people or specific racial makeup? There is no rule. There is no rule that says that the play cannot be reimagined to have other characters, that have other people After all, we're all human beings. So if we're saying that, oh, race is only skin deep, but then we're like, oh, you're black, you can't play this character, then it doesn't make any sense. Some of them have said as much, right? Or that Romeo and Juliet are European characters, so they should be played by European people. And I think it makes no sense. It makes no sense. If these actors are if they are good enough in their job, if they are fantastic in their job, if they can interpret the role very well, yeah, I think it should go. It should go. However, the other point about them saying, "Oh, this lady is just because she's ugly, that's why we are having issues." Not so true. Okay, now remember when this black British actor, I've forgotten his name, right? When they wanted to cast him for the role of James Bond, that guy is handsome. Like, that guy is handsome. People still had issues with him being cast as James Bond because, oh, they say, oh well, James Bond is white. A black James Bond will just stick out in a sea of white faces. Oh yeah, okay. James Bond is a fictional character anyway. There is no reason why the James Bond character with a black actor cannot be written in such a manner for it to make sense that James Bond is a black character. So we can see that people had issues even when the actor was handsome. So it's not about the actor being not beautiful. It's not about the actor or the actress not being pleasing to the eyes. It's just the fact that they just looks at it and say, oh no no, a black person. And some of them will say, oh, this is is wokeness is, yeah, it may be, right, it may be, but how are you so certain that it is? But why should that even be your problem in the first place? Why should it matter to you that this actor has a specific skin tone? Why should it matter to you? If the actor can do their job, if we're saying, you know what matters is meritocracy, what matters is competence, what matters is what the person is able to do. But somehow, in some situations, the skin color matter. Now, I'm not saying it's a good thing for you to just go about changing typically white actors or plays that were written with white people, changing their racial makeup. I'm agnostic on that point. I don't care either way, whether you want to do that, whether you do. No, I don't care. But you have to understand that Western society today is not just European. It's a mix of many peoples. It's a mix of European people, of African people, of Asian people, of Australian people, of whatever. It's a mix of different people. So if this is what the society is today, right, then I don't see it as out of place to incorporate characters from people that currently live in that society. I don't see it. No, I have no problem if I don't have any problem. I don't have any problem if black people or Asian people are not put in those movies. I don't have any problem either. I don't have any problem if they are put in those movies. My own issue is, does the movie make sense? Does it tell a good story? Are the actors interpreting their roles perfectly? Are they interpreting it very well? That's what's most important to me. But people are so stuck up in these very rigid categorizations. Very, you don't want to change things. You don't want to evolve with the world. You're very picky about very silly little things, right? Things that don't actually matter. There are bigger problems in the world than, there are big. I think there are bigger problems that the West is facing than what is the color of an actor's skin. If this character was an historical character, is someone who actually lived, and they were playing a, let's say they wanted to play someone like Queen Elizabeth, and then they brought in a black lady, and I'll be like, no, that's crazy, right? Because we all know Queen Elizabeth is not Queen Elizabeth is not black, right? But if it's for a fictional character like Romeo and Juliet, hell, anybody can play her. Anybody can play them, right? So it's not about the fact that this lady is ugly, or as they say, I don't know. There is a saying that beauty is in the eyes of the beholder. So whether or not you think that she's ugly, that's just you. If you think she's ugly, don't watch the movie. But to say that she cannot play that character because, oh, she's black, and that's the play Romeo and Juliet was made with European characters in mind. I don't think it makes any sense. Anybody can play any character, right? And Tom Holland is not the most flattering man as well, right? He's not the most handsome man to play that role. I don't see anybody complaining that he is not desirable for the role. I mean, how can someone say, "Oh, this is the person that Romeo is supposed to kill himself for"? It doesn't make any. It's just mean. It's just mean. And these actresses, people treat them as if they're not human beings, as if they don't have feelings, as if they are not hurt by the words that come at them. They did not decide to cast themselves for that role. The producers decided to say, okay, we want to cast this role. We want to cast this person um, as this character in this movie. And people are, they're just up in arms over nothing, as I would say. It's over nothing. You're up in arms over the interpretation of a fictional character. So, well, I don't know. I don't know. So maybe I'll just take some comments. I can see Dragon is here, Asta is here, Stanley is here. So Asta says there are no rules, but it's more authentic to the period. Yeah, it's more authentic to the period. Yeah, we know that, but it's still fiction, right? It's still fiction. Fiction can be interpreted any way you want to interpret it. I think you can interpret fiction whatever way you want to interpret it, right? If you want to say it's more authentic to the period, then when you've crossed into the realm of fiction, almost anything is possible. It's just like Tim Pool commenting that he is not going to play a female character in a game because it's not physically possible for a female to beat up a male in real life. And I'm like, yeah, duh. But in the video game, anything is possible. In the video game, the female characters can be made to be as strong or even stronger than the male characters. So it's fiction. You can actually do that. But, has a level of sense that it has or nonsense. So Gardenia says, I strongly believe this version makes more sense for the film. Yeah, I don't know whether it makes more sense, but I have no issues with it. I have no issues with it either way. Asta directly says, I had a problem with Daniel Craig being the new James Bond because he was the wrong hair color. Really? That's crazy. What hair color was James Bond? I mean, why are you so stuck up on the hair color for James Bond? James Bond's supposed to be just one dark haired kind of person. I don't know. Numerous people have played James Bond over the years. If you have a problem with the hair color, then you probably should have had a problem with the build as well. You should have had a problem with all the James Bond that have been used. They don't have the same build. They don't have the same personality. So why hair color? Why is the hair color the only feature that you're having a problem with? Why not high color as well? Why not height? Why not some other things, right? Dragon, I don't know what that face means. And Stanley says test. Stanley, you're here. Stanley says this is a wish list for what the West is. The shoulda, coulda, wait your turn West, right? Yeah, and the especially this especially comes from black people who would say something like, oh, why don't we just create more black characters? Oh, there are black characters that we could have created. And yeah, they are, of course, you can do that, right? That's not a bad thing to do. But I don't think this is a bad thing either. I don't think casting black people in certain roles that were typically played by white people, I don't think it's a bad thing either, right? So, uh, I don't know, right? Stanley says, not nothing. America is a racist country. Then Stanley says, I think Romeo and Juliet is the perfect story for interracial romance. Shakespeare was literally an actual genius, if even if by accident. Yeah, so probably. But you can call in Stanley. Let's have a chat about this, and others who are in the stream. Let's have a chat about this. Asta says Bond always had brown hair, and the Daniel Craig came in with blonde. Yeah, well, he came in with blonde. Was the blonde hair? Did it make the movie any worse, or was his acting what was on point? I don't know. I don't know. I don't think I'm hung up on such points as physical characteristics of the actors, right? I don't think I'm as hung up on that. So Stanley says totally true. Creating characters is really not a good idea. Well, I think you can create characters, right? I think you can create more characters. So that's essentially so far what what got me to make this live stream. But so I'll just put the link in the chat, and you want to call, let's have a conversation. You can call in and let's have that conversation. Stanley says by race I mean, okay, so maybe when you call in, you get to explain that point very well. When you say by race you mean, so before someone calls in, I was having a conversation with Wolf today, and he was just telling me about the US's border, the southern border, and he's a national guard that's posted there, and he's just telling me things that are breaking my heart. That that there's a lot of illegals just coming into the country, breaking in, and nothing is being done. The president doesn't want to assist, and Anyway, maybe we might get to that later on. Stanley, how are you doing? Welcome to Conversation.
I'm good. How are you doing?
Good, good. Been a while.
Yeah, it has. You've been
Yeah,
busy apparently.
yeah.
How's the
Very.
family?
Family is good. How's your son?
He is good. I am just like fearing the empty nest, but um,
Yeah.
so we go.
Mu- it must be tough. It must be tough now when he's off
Not
the field.
really. You know what? Seeing a dirty like dish in the sink, you know, makes me pray for an empty nest. I'm just joking.
Yeah,
But
that's interesting.
no, you know what? This is finally something you and I actually agree a lot on. I just think that I think you're right to really be consternated. Is that a word? Consternation? Consternated?
Yeah, it is.
It's art. In interracial like forbidden fruit sort of Capulets and Montagues, that's like the perfect Romeo and Juliet story.
Mm,
And um, dude, I think if there's really a problem with America in the West in general, it's we don't teach our kids like how to be imaginative. We don't teach them how to reinterpret stories to make them modern. We're not doing a good job educating our kids. We're not teaching creativity. There are a lot of, I'm going to just say we're messing our kids up because we're not educating them well. And
mm.
so that's my rant.
Yeah, but the thing is, it's not even the kids who have a problem with things like this. It's some of the adults who should know better.
Yeah, but who's teaching the kids?
Yeah,
Have you ever have you ever been to a restaurant or like a school meeting? I don't think your daughter's school age yet, but I've been, to a, parent teacher meeting or something like that.
mm,
And you think to yourself, I cannot believe that there is a poor child being raised by these parents. I thought that. So,
hey, SKC, how you doing?
oh,
Hey, how's it going?
Good, good, good. It's been 1,000 years since we last spoke. It's good to have you.
Yeah, it's I've been quite busy, and just life, especially children and all that stuff. So
Yeah, me
I
too.
saw you on a Free Zone Loose show a few days ago.
yeah,
You were
I stepped
you
up
were
there for a
holding
little.
court.
Yeah, I stepped up there for just a little while, just to uh, that whole. I I don't have a lot of commentary on a lot of the whole dating people and all this stuff because the topic just really isn't that interesting to me. But I thought I'd chime in that one time for that. But I'm curious. What are you guys' thoughts on this whole Romeo and Juliet thing? I heard Stanley's thoughts that this Shakespearean tale was perfect for the interracial love thing. I disagree, but I'm curious, Charles, your
Well, not
thoughts.
love. I didn't say love. I said, or did I? I said romance. Romance isn't always love. It doesn't always end in a loving relationship or permanent relationship. So please, if we're going to talk Shakespeare, get the words right.
Yeah. So for me, I had given my thoughts earlier that a lot of people were saying part of the reason why why they have issues with the character was because she's ugly, and I'm like, nah, that's BS because there have been situations where,
Oh my
a not,
goodness.
yeah, they said that.
Oh, I thought it was because she was black.
Oh no, that's
My
so.
bad.
So there have been situations where the character was handsome and black, and people still had issues. So I I think that's BS. They should just come out and say, "Oh,
Yeah,
we
like
have an issue
Idris
with."
Elba, who is
Exactly,
obviously,
exactly,
but James
exactly.
Bond, a black James Bond. Oh, we are just, the world is not enough.
Huh.
That's a
So
No,
James
no,
Bond
no, no
movie
pun
joke.
intended, huh? Yeah, I
so
caught it.
so so my let me just finish my point. So my point is, I think that what is most important for plays like this, right? Taking into consideration that Western society today isn't just European anymore; it's a mix of European, African, Asian, and what have you, right? And it doesn't take anything away from a movie if people of diverse backgrounds are featured in that movie, especially for a fictional movie, a fictional role, right? Um, as long as the actors are competent enough, as long as they can interpret the role very well, they do a good job of the role, then I don't see a problem why you say, oh, this role is stereotypically this person, this race or that race, right? When the same people have been rallying against, oh, let's be colorblind about issues. But suddenly, when it comes to a fictional play, we have issues with the casting of some of the characters. It doesn't make any sense to me, right? If it were, I take issues if it were actually a historical figure. Let's say you wanted to play, like the example I gave earlier, you wanted to play Queen Elizabeth, and then you bring in a black person. I'm like, we all know Queen Elizabeth wasn't black, so it doesn't make any sense to do that. But with something like Romeo and Juliet, it's a fictional character. You have creative license to be as creative with the character as much as possible. Many of these plays or many of these stories that we see in movies that were written decades ago, they've not been performed the exact way they were written. They've been evolution over the years, they've been changes, they've been new characters brought in. So I really don't see an issue with that. If you think the character is ugly and you don't want to see her face, please don't see the movie, right? But to just bitch about it on the internet like someone who has nothing else to do with their time than to just whine about the racial makeup of a fictional character, just doesn't make any sense to me. Yeah. So SKC, that's my position. Yeah, you can respond. What's yours?
Yeah, I think I'm kind of in the middle on this one, Charles, because I understand both opinions. And take for instance, for the people who are being highly critical of the that whole setup, it's I can understand how particularly white men are like, hey, good grief, how much of this are you gonna just kind of like shove in our face? This whole idea of um uh who we need to be with, and the whole interracial thing. I mean, it's all over commercials, it's in advertisements, and it's been pushed in I don't know how many different movies and shows and so forth. So I mean, I get that understanding of it. Um, on the opposite end, when people are doing the whole thing about oh, you're you're just stating this because the woman is physically unattractive and so forth, and she's black. I mean, okay, I understand what they're attempting to do, but I lean, although I'm in the middle, I lean just a little bit more towards the what the white guys are saying, and what others are saying on this with the whole I mean, what they call it, race swap thing and all that. The reason being is because in the story of, I mean, even in this story, it just doesn't make sense. In the story of Romeo and Juliet, um, Juliet is supposed to be strikingly beautiful. That is the whole reason why the young man, Romeo, was smitten by her. That's a given. The second part of it is why I don't think that the interracial focus of it all um, would work well with this Shakespearean play is that the two families had ideological differences, not racial. Uh, um, it wasn't some sort of issues dealing with racial difficulties and or racism or something like that. Which I'm assuming that that's probably going to be the main thrust of
Why do
how
you
they
assume
the
that?
story, huh?
Why do you assume that?
Because typically a lot of the story writers and the individuals that involve themselves in the um in the whole race swap thing, they aren't that serious of writers. We've seen a pattern of that throughout Hollywood and also in the BBC. I mean, you can look at that with Doctor Who. You can see it when it came to all of the Marvel characters. You can see it in a variety of other movies that have been race swapped. There, take for instance in the whole Amazon thing with the Lord of the Rings. Pushing the whole idea of there needs to be black characters in it, not characters that are interesting or true to the plot and theme of the story whatsoever. Another example of that would be a lot of the BBC historical series. Um, they're inserting black characters, main characters, not to go along with the theme, but a lot of times those characters are pushing thoughts about race. So I mean, it's like that to not assume that would be like, okay, what are we hoping for? An anomaly in this situation?
Okay, so I think I get your drift. Well, my question would be, yeah, what you just described is a possibility, but you can't punish someone for something that they haven't yet done. I mean, you haven't seen the script of the movie. You can't make that kind of judgment call, right? And besides, if you don't, like, movies are not owned by, they're not owned by everyone. They're owned by the producers, they're owned by the company that is making the movie. You can't be angry that that's literally how capitalism works, right? You can't be angry at the products that a company is making. The best you can do is not patronize them, not buy the movie, not see the movie, but to be angry that a company is making certain products, it just doesn't make sense to me, right? Now, speaking about wanting to bring in black characters into a movie, not characters who are interesting, I don't see a reason why you can't do both. I don't see a reason why you can't do bring in black characters who are just as interesting, right? Um, they could fail with they could fail with either one, but I don't think them saying we want to bring in more black characters it precludes them from being interesting. Now, I say this with this understanding in mind that, you know what, Western society isn't what it was 100 years ago, isn't what it was 200 years ago. Today, it's everybody that's there, right? So it's, you know, yeah, it's not a big deal. I when I started this podcast this evening, I gave an example of something that pissed me off that's happening in Nigeria, right? Okay, now they have banned foreign actresses or foreign models from taking roles in advertisements in Nigeria, right? But the way they're going about it is pissing me off because if they just see anyone that looks light skinned, right, that person will be, automatically that model cannot feature in that advertisement. But there are Nigerians who are light skinned. So for your exclusion criteria to just be, we're not checking whether this person actually a foreigner. We've not checked their nationality. We've not checked their passport. We're just going off based on their looks. We're just saying, oh, this person looks mixed race. Oh, so not even this person looks white. This person looks mixed race. So this person cannot play a character in Nigerian advertisement when there are lots of mixed race Nigerians. There are a lot of light skinned Nigerians. So it just shows you that you are stuck in a period when the people in the geographical area looked stereotypically one kind of way, but it has moved past that now. You have moved to a situation where you have different people living in that society, and if the society says, I want to be inclusive, I want to I want to make people that don't look typically like the majority of the population feel included in what we are doing in this society, then it seems like a very minor issue to be bitchy about. It seems like a really, 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 really minor issue. So I don't know, man.
If I could counter, I would say this, Charles. Um, i- i- I agree with some of what Stanley said when he stated that children are not being taught to be an imaginative and to be creative. Uh, the part that I disagree with is with the idea of reimagining stories and so forth. I don't think that that's necessary. The stories are what they are, and some of the cultural and time um, sensitive history to those tales add a significant flavor to the stories that I think becomes watered down when people try to do all of the reimagining thing. But when um, when you say that America or the West is more of uh, I would say a boiling pot, a, a melting pot. Um, yeah, that's fine, but that doesn't mean that you have to go into other people's histories, stories, and then retell them to make people feel as if they are part of it. And because and here's the odd thing that I that I find about that. Take for instance, your book, um, Hotel Simdam,
Shindam, Hotel Shindam.
Simdam.
Yep.
Let's say if someone in Asia read it and they enjoyed it, did they necessarily have to see themselves in your story in order to enjoy it?
No.
And that's the whole point. That's one of the um main reasons or rationales that a lot of the, I would say, kind of like the race hustlers get wrong, is
But
that
but if I
in
had
universal
but if I
stories
had Asian
you
characters,
don't you said what?
but if I had Asian characters in the, if I had Asian characters, just that I had European characters in that movie, in that book that I wrote, right? It doesn't detract from the story. It doesn't detract from how well I'm writing the story, right? The existence of other groups in it doesn't detract from it at all. Even if it doesn't make you particularly, it doesn't make it any more special to have more characters. It still doesn't detract it from having more characters when it has more characters.
Well, the main character was telling a perspective and showing his clear mindedness on a variety of issues. He could understand both sides of the argument that took place at the hotel. You know, past all the murder thing. But um, would it be different if it was a, let's say it was a an Asian man who had moved over to Africa, and he was the one that was giving the arguments for both? Would do you think that that would change the flavor of the story any?
It depends on how it is written. If we have we have Asian people in, we have a lot of Chinese people in Nigeria who are doing business. If their
Hmm.
progeny have lived maybe in Nigeria for two generations, right? They are Nigerian citizens.
Hmm.
There is no reason that they cannot share their Nigerian experience, or they cannot partake in that Nigerian experience. There's a white kid who is in Nigeria that if you don't see him when he's speaking, you think he's a Nigerian, right? Because he grew up here, so he talks Nigerian, he knows all the slangs, he says he dresses Nigerian and all that. You can't say, oh, because this guy is of European heritage, then his experiences of being a Nigerian is invalid. Because when he says something, I can relate to it. I can relate to what he's saying, the cultural similarity, because that is where he grew up in. So I don't think that cultural experiences are linked to your ethnicity, your genetics, or whatever. We're people and we experience things where we are, and that's why I keep saying the West right now is not just one people. It's different peoples. So everybody can share in that. You as a Westerner, right? You would relate to the story of Romeo and Juliet. You're black, but the story of Romeo and Juliet, you'd probably relate to it much more than someone in maybe in the villages somewhere in Africa, right? Why? Why would
Very
you be
much
able
so.
to relate more to it than someone who is in the villages in Africa? Because you're a Westerner. That's a Western story, right? So that's your that's your culture. That's a culture that you have been born into, that you're a part of. So if someone like you is cast in that character that you would be able to relate with, why is that a problem?
Well, I think it's a problem because it when let's say if you were just casting a person that was, I don't know, of a different race that was in the story, fine. But when you try to pull cultural background issues that um that would be linked to that person instead of the timeless theme of the story itself. I mean, take for instance this whole thing with Romeo and Juliet. I mean, I remember studying that stuff when I was in high school and college. I mean, the Shakespeare is literally um, showing the the clash between love and hate and its different motivations, and kind of turning both on their head, um, in comparing these two families that have had this long term feud, and then all of the um, love muses that are between Romeo and Juliet, because the people that are connected to them in their lives just cannot understand what the heck they were doing. I mean,
So,
Oh my
heck, you
goodness.
I
even
have
hear the part where
Can I?
listen.
Romeo leaves his two friends to go to Juliet's garden. So I mean, there's a lot of depth in there, but when you try to muck it up with, oh man, well they don't understand us because of our skin, and it's like, oh come on, that it
So,
just it
so,
becomes
so
Can
ridiculous.
SKC.
I? I haven't
Sorry,
spoken in a while.
Stanley.
May I?
Yeah, yeah, Stanley. Sorry, just 1 minute before you go.
Yes,
SKC, I will
sir.
just say this: is there are there no parallels today in real life that you can draw between the story of Romeo and Juliet and a mixed race couple? Can you not find similar parallels, real life parallels? Has nothing to do with race, has everything to do with the struggles that Romeo and Juliet faced in their um in that story. Are you telling me that that's not possible?
No, no, I think that I think that if it was done along the theme of Romeo and Juliet, that would I think that a good writing would be able to bring those ideas out. It would be more focused on the ideology of the two families that are clashing versus, something that has to do with some sort of cultural
But
issue.
you don't know if that's not what you don't know that that's not what this play is going to be about.
Okay.
All right,
Can I
Stanley,
go?
over to you. Yeah.
Okay. Number one, Shakespeare wrote Othello. So Shakespeare, even in the 17th century, was aware of race. Okay, and then one thing I want to contradict you on, Charles, the West has never been um, all white. Um, Algebra and calculus were not invented by Europe. They were invented by Arab culture. So the West has always been multicultural, is what I want to say. If you've ever been to Italy, and I have, there are some dark people. It is not all, northern Italy. And I wrote these down just so I could not ramble too much. Good art, and I'm thinking of Othello. My point is, of course, Shakespeare he wrote about race. Did he not in Othello? Good art is universal. Um, Good art is not meant to be word for word static. Good art can be riffed upon, much like languages, and good art, at least writing, poetry, words are meant to be bent, words are not static, etc. Um, and I'm confused by some of SKC's points. Are you saying that family? I'm very confused by a lot of SKC's points. Um, I will go back to the point. Um, a family. Two families can have conflict when two kids who aren't supposed to be together, at least in theory. Race is just one of the things. It can be rich poor, it can be black white, it can be white Asian, it can be a myriad of things. In that, you know, a white story written by a white man from England can't be universal, limits Shakespeare. Good art has universal themes. And dude, um, apparently you went to a high school where they didn't teach Shakespeare very well. So that's what I have to say.
Yeah, SKC, you can respond.
Yeah, I just yeah. I mean, I'm not trying to rehash all of the
There's no
everything.
rehashing. I wrote it all down. I said what I had to say. Um, is good art universal? Good art can be adapted to different types of conflicts. Shakespeare knew race. Othello is a good example of that. And I'm claiming they didn't teach you Shakespeare well wherever it was you went to college or high school. Those are my claims.
But Stanley, that's that's not for you to say that you didn't teach him Shakespeare well. Well,
No, no. I'm theorizing. Can I not theorize? It's not an ad hoc attack. I'm just saying that I think that Shakespeare actually can transcend um, conflict, two families who don't agree, whatever the politics were or the rich poor, whatever it was. I think Romeo and Juliet is a lot more flexible than black and white. We can't have a black Juliet. That's actually ridiculous. And I will not, I'm not making an ad hoc. I'm saying not understanding Shakespeare and how good art can be adapted. That's in and of itself racist. If a Juliet or Romeo can't be black, they have to be one thing or another. That's racist in and of itself. That's not colorblind, it's just pure racist. And I didn't name names. That's what I said. Not meant to be an ad hoc sort of point.
Yeah. So, well, I think,
I mean, like I stated, uh, the, it's like Charles. I'm not trying to turn this into a class on Shakespearean tales and all of that stuff. I mean,
Well,
even
it's about
the
Romeo and Juliet. What else could it be?
well, Shakespeare actually borrowed the play. It was a story that existed way before and it had nothing to do with two families
Hmm.
engaging in any sort of racial clash.
And he took a story and did what with it? He did his own riff. So he didn't take it word for word. He turned it into Shakespeare, whatever the old story was. What is wrong with taking a Shakespeare story and putting a new riff on great art? That's really my
Okay.
point.
Okay. So, do you know how much he changed?
Um, you're not addressing my point.
I I
I'm
am
not a
addressing your point.
Shakespeare. I am not a Shakespeare scholar. Are you?
I'm just asking the question. Do you know how much he changed?
Do you? I don't think you
Yes,
do.
yes, I do.
I don't think you do.
It's not that much that he changed.
Okay. So it's a
So
so
when you say
Romeo and Juliet have to be white,
when you claim
dude.
that Shakespeare,
Uh, dude,
Stanley,
if I
please let
can,
him
I'm
finish.
not claiming
Stanley, please let
anything.
him
I'm
finish.
not. All I'm saying is great art
Stanley,
can be changed to suit the times. Address that point. Don't ask me very specific Shakespeare questions. The answer
okay,
is I don't know.
okay,
Apparently you
so
do.
then Shakespeare took a timeless tale and then he retold it, but he did not change the thematic elements of it, nor did he change major
Well, the
properties
thematic
of the
element
story.
is conflict
Stanley,
between families,
please.
correct?
Excuse it, please finish.
Yeah. And the conflict between the two families that had existed for quite some time, way before Romeo and Juliet were even born, generations upon generations of this family going back and forth with each other, these two specific named families, that was the background and thrust of the story. And it's like I will be very interested, Charles, to see how that is portrayed in this story. And I don't
Yeah,
think
I think,
that I really do not believe that that central element that is in the original tale, that's also in the Shakespearean Romeo and Juliet, would be followed or would play a major role in this story.
well, I think we should wait when the movie comes out, we can make that judgment call. But right now, we're just making a call based off of the skin tone of one of the characters, and
Can I
I
respond?
take issues with that. Yeah, go
So,
ahead.
SKC, all you're saying is they need to stick to the script. That's what you're saying, right?
No, I'm saying that if you have the background of these two families that have been um doing
You're
their
talking
catfish.
fiction, it's made up. The original story was made up. If it got modified by Shakespeare, we're modifying something that Shakespeare said. What exactly can you name exactly the story that Shakespeare ripped on in Romeo and Juliet. What was it he made a new story from? Do you know?
Yeah. I mean, he changed elements. That there was a religious
Of which
element. That
story? Can you
uh,
name the story?
well, now you're the one that's
Stanley, please
asking
let
me
him.
the specific
No,
Stanley, let him
information
I
finish.
about the
don't know.
story.
Educate me.
Stanley, let him
But
finish,
that's
please.
what I mean. It's like that's why I stated earlier I didn't want to begin this by having some sort of Shakespearean class. Hold on just a moment. I gotta handle something with my wife.
All right, sure.
All
Yeah.
I'm saying is he. I know the Shakespeare story. I'm open to knowing the story that Shakespeare changed the elements of and wrote a classic on. I'm certainly open.
Yeah, but that's what I was saying. I didn't want to make this a long drawn out
Well, no,
rehashing
it doesn't
of
have to
that.
be long and drawn out. Just tell me the story, or name the title so I can read it.
Okay, sure. Just go back and go read the story of the tragical history of Romulus and Juliet, Arthur Brooke. All right. And then there's other sections of that that goes back further than that. There's other similar stories that go back further. So just look that up and you go from there.
Okay,
But
Arthur
the,
Brooke.
but the but
Got
the
it. Thank
thrust
you.
but the thr
Thank you.
but the
Thank you.
thrust behind the
Now I
story were
have
these
something
two.
to read.
Okay, but the thrust was these two families that had this long existing feud. Both of those families had um, had these things in common. They had numbers, they had power, they had money.
And
Both
you
of
missed
both
the
sides.
total point. There was conflict. You forgot that part.
And in that, Charles, these two powerful families um, had over time scarred each other over time, and they were feuding and so forth. And now you had this situation between two of their, their up and coming um, youngsters. The other part of it that I find quite interesting is that we were talking about this situation earlier when the point that I do agree with Stanley about was people not having the imagination anymore. Take for instance, like you were stating in the West. Um, why can't you read these stories and be inspired to make something new?
Well, I'm lost. How is this not new? How is this new interpretation not new? It's a new take on an old story. Would you agree with that? Something that Shakespeare obviously did. He did a new take on an old story. Why can't that be done today and not be good or acceptable?
Well, I'm saying that it's becoming a common trend within media as a whole. The what I would deem and have others have deemed just lazy writers, not wanting to put in the work in order to create interesting and universal characters themselves. Instead, they like to just do the race or gender swap into already mainstream stories that people um, have a built fandom or history to. It seems as though they lack the
Okay,
ability or the willingness to be able to do the hard work of creating interesting
okay.
and great characters that would be well read and well respected by other people the world over. They just want to skip the line and throw themselves into stories that they know that they were not a part of.
Now that part I can agree on. Okay, I see where you're going with this. Good. Okay, I agree.
But the thing is that what they are doing with this story? Are you? Do you have evidence that that's what they're doing with this story?
Well, again, Charles, if we just look at and I know you're saying give the benefit of the doubt when it comes to this particular story, it has to be a thing of show and tell, and we have to see what is going to be the outcome of it. However, I'm grading against what has already been done and what the common trend within um, film has been for at least the last 10 years. I mean, you look at all of the stuff that has happened in Marvel. You look at Star Trek Discovery. They didn't even try to make a new and interesting character like they did with that of Cisco, of Captain Cisco. They connected this woman to probably one of the most famous characters in all of Star Trek, Spock. So it's you do say they did the same thing was done in Lord of the Rings. The same thing was done in the Viking series. A actual white man that was a Viking king gets transferred into being a black woman queen. I mean, it's ridiculous.
Can I push back just a tad? Because I your overall point I do agree with, but and I can't think of the book right now, and I will struggle to either remember or put it in a back chat. But there is a whole literary theory. You've heard that history doesn't repeat, it rhymes. Humans have been humans for quite some time. And the odd thing about humans is some of the same stuff that happens in 2024 happened 500 years ago. Um, Rich kid, poor kid get together, or rich family that are rivals. Humanity and human relationships have a very annoying habit of we haven't reinvented the wheel in thousands of years. We have ripped on a wheel. We have cars. We have ripped on fire. We invented electricity, but the basics of, say, thermodynamics, it's still thermodynamics. We just find new uses for it. So I I don't know that there is anything new under the sun. We just have different takes on, and we call it new or pretend it's new. Um, I think literature is probably the worst of all, the topics. Humans are humans. Even 2,000 years ago, we're still roughly the same emotions and all that stuff. And sorry, I'm being rather metaphysical, but um, same things. Relationships haven't changed that much.
Yeah, I
Race
mean,
is
I'll give you.
relatively, in the course of human history, race is a rather new concept, correct?
I mean, to some degree, I'll give you that, but then there's a lot of gradations between um, stories and all of those things. No one, you can see a variety of things in Star Wars, but Star Wars is Star Wars. It's
Okay, well, Star
it's its
Wars is
own
even more
entity,
recent than
and
Romeo and Juliet. And
right,
um, in a way, Star Wars was an old theme, right? It wasn't like brand new. The technology was, the media that we witnessed Star Wars on was new. The
correct.
stories, remember they called Star Wars, what was it? A space cowboy movie or something like that?
Yeah, some say
Cowboy
a space
movies weren't
cowboy, some
invented
say
in
space.
1978. George Lucas didn't invent cowboys. It was a new rip on an old theme.
Right,
Human
right, but you
relationships
can.
are not new. Um, I
Right, right, but
I look
you can literally.
forward to something new. Haven't seen it. There are riffs. History rhymes. It doesn't necessarily repeat. Thank
Okay,
goodness.
just asking really quickly. So you mean to tell me that um like there are specific scenes that are have been ripped from
Okay,
uh
we're
what
not. I made a big picture point. What you generally do is you want to nail down specifics. I made a general point. Deal with my generalities. Um, I don't know the specifics. It's
sure,
I
sure,
saw I
sure.
saw Star Wars. I saw Star Wars in 1978 in a theater. So I've seen it many times since. I didn't take it that seriously enough to actually quote Star Wars movies or Marvel movies. Nah, I don't. That's comic book stuff. I stick to Shakespeare.
Okay, I'll deal in generalities. Um, Star Wars is not um the good, the bad, the ugly, and
No, you're
and
again. Star Wars is not based on a Clint Eastwood movie. Come on now. You're trying to be specific. The themes of cowboy movies in America, good guy, bad guy. Bad guy gets his comeuppance. That's the general theme. I don't know the specific cowboy movie, but there are hundreds of them. So, you said you were going to stick to generalities, and
okay,
you're
okay.
naming specific movies.
No, I am doing generalities. Take for instance, theme. What cowboy movie?
No,
Amer-
don't know specifics. I just said that. I'm talking a general theme.
Father versus son.
Abraham and what? Isaac.
And all I'm saying is that is not generally the theme
I
within
think
themes.
a
The
lot
theme
of stories are
you
based on
keep
the
cutting
Bible.
you keep cutting me off, but it's like
Okay,
the same
you know
thing
what? I'm going to
arises.
let you
It's like,
prattle on then. I'll mute.
oh, okay. Well, generally speaking, I don't know anybody that can probably rattle off to me a cowboy movie that focused on father versus son.
Can I ask McClintock? Remember John Wayne movie McClintock? You remember? There were several sons. Have you seen John Wayne movie? I know you like John Wayne, don't
I liked them in Red River.
you? Yeah, okay. Well, I name a specific and you jump to another movie. I think I've proven my point.
But you were stating generalities.
You asked me for a specific. I gave you McClintock, and now you jump to Red River. I think I've made my point.
Okay, okay. Well, I'll leave it at that. But yeah, I mean, just making the whole general thing that all the stories are the same. I think that the box office and money proves differently from that.
Well, if
All
your
right.
measure of creativity is box office and movies, then I kind of get you there.
All right. So, well, I think we've said a lot, and we've all had interesting points. Some I agree with, some I disagree with, and but my own issue is that I think we get hung up about some issues that are not so important in the grand scheme of things, right? When you want to consider what could we actually put our energy, emotional energy into, just being so and hung up about the skin color of a fictional character just seems very low down the lists of priorities, right? So that's my point anyway. That's my take anyway. I think we've said our minds on this issue, and I don't want the stream to drag on for longer than this. So this would be a
Yeah.
good place to bring the stream to a close. I'd probably do another one within the week or by weekend again where we can talk about something else. Yeah. So I'll just take final thoughts from Stanley, SKC, and then we'll be done. So, Stanley.
Great art isn't limited by skin color. And actually, I kind of understand SKC a lot better. He views everything through white men's eyes. I don't.
Yeah, yeah. I just think that
Oh,
you know, being able to respect different cultures from all over the world um, would include not trying to um, come in and change, um, timeless things to them. I think if anybody went to Nigeria and tried to uh, do a Nigerian tale and insert main characters as non-Nigerian, that probably a lot of Nigerian people would be upset about that. And I think that will be the same if you went to China or if you went to South America or wherever. And to play around with that and act as if um, and to act as if those things are not important, and to I guess throw them away just because everything is supposed to be quote unquote evil white man these days. I just don't think that that's a good look for anyone.
I,
okay.
I await your postcards from China and Nigeria.
So, just final point to SKC's point that I just made. So, not if Europeans and other groups have been living in Nigeria for 500 years, and then there is a reimagining of a traditional Nigerian story, and people are having issues with it. Then I would have issues with them having issues with it. So it's not the analogy with Nigeria is not a I don't think it's a seamless one because the dynamics, the demography, the history is not the same, right? The US has had the West has had black people living there for how long? You know, centuries, if you put it that way. It isn't this so much that with with Nigeria and all that. Oh, Wolf just came in, so let me give Wolf 5 minutes. I didn't know he was backstage. Hey
Yeah,
Wolf,
appreciate it.
I don't know how much of the conversation you caught, but this is just you 5 minutes and we're done. Not more
Yeah.
than 5 minutes. So go ahead.
So I understand where Stanley coming from. I just got a couple of questions to ask you, SKC. So, okay, because I'm late, so if I'm wrong, correct me, right? Are you saying that if
Well,
black
I tell you
people,
what, just because I want to be really kind to Charles, and I'll throw this offer to you because I don't know, Charles, how much time you have. Wolf, if you
He
want
said
to
five
have
minutes. Didn't you hear?
well, well, yeah, SKC,
Wolf, if
like
you want to
it
have
won't
the
even take that
elongated
long.
conversation with me, I'm willing to open up a stream right now.
Well, let me use the five here, and if you don't answer everything here, we'll
Do
trade
it.
over there.
No, 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 no. I want to.
Stanley,
Can you?
Stanley,
No.
Stanley.
Hold on,
Drop
y'all. Y'all
that.
taking
Drop
my
that
time,
link.
bro.
I'll
Hold
hop
on.
on.
Y'all got to take my time. Let me get the 5 minutes Charles promised me. So, SKC, are you saying that tokenizing Romeo and Juliet, is that what it is? That if they made a black Juliet or black Romeo, you see that as like what exactly?
I have based upon how film has been going over the last 10 to 15 years or so. I have no
Hmm.
confidence in the writer's ability to be able to stick to theme and not try to racialize issues.
Okay. Now this is kind of a little bit off topic, but it'll tie it back together because we're talking about movies, art as a whole, correct? Is that kind of what you're getting at? Like
Yeah,
we're talking about movies, art. So when
yeah,
Picasso
yeah.
stole African art and tokenized it for white people, was that okay?
I'm unaware that he did so.
The mask on the painting, posted it in the chat. He stole masks from African tribes and use that to do some of his paintings that he sold for hundreds of millions of dollars, is that okay? I'm not trying to be confrontational. I'm just asking you because to me, that's tokenizing black art for white people's gain.
Yeah. So 1 minute more.
That's all I'm asking, bro. Is that tokenization? Because that's just one
Well,
example. There's plenty more that Picasso did.
okay, just to I have no idea. I really don't. I mean, I know that the majority of Picasso's stuff when was sold for very high amounts after his death.
No, but see, SKC, that you didn't answer my question though. If what I'm saying is true, is that not tokenization?
No, I don't think that it is. I don't have
So
any.
him stealing art from African tribes and using it in his work is not tokenization.
Again, I have no idea of or
Come on,
confidence
Seven seconds
that
more.
he stole anything.
5 seconds more.
I'm sorry, Charles. All right, I'll wrap it up there. SKC, open the panel. We'll take it over there. But I appreciate the
All
time, Charles.
right. Thank you very much,
Please,
SKC.
please
Thank you,
make a
Stanley.
link
Thank you.
available to me because I'd like to continue this.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Like, share, subscribe, and I'll catch you guys in another live stream. Bye for now.
SKC won't.